Welcome back to another episode of Why Do I Do That? I have Steph again today, my favorite person to come on. I feel like it's going to be the Steph and Jess podcast eventually.
By the end of the next year.
Love having you back. Today's question is, why do I feel less powerful when in a relationship? And I can hard relate, but I'm going to throw it to you first because I feel like I have a story for this one.
Okay. Yes.
So why do you think that women feel less powerful when they're in a relationship versus when they're single?
I do love this one because, again, hard relate on a personal level as well. So just first of all, want to make whoever asks this so validated because it's something that a lot of people experience. One of the first things that come to my mind is, I guess, a sense of relationship with yourself that maybe isn't as deep or isn't as sustainably formed, or, society in one way or another telling you that you are more powerful when you're independent and not in a relationship. And therefore, when you're getting into a relationship, if there's a mix of a belief that you need to be independent and being in a relationship is less powerful, or not having a relationship with yourself, therefore leading to distrust with yourself and feeling more scared in a relationship, or having a very surface level relationship with yourself, making you feel more powerful outside of a relationship. So when you can do all the surface level things, you're like, yes, I'm independent, I'm doing Pilates and I'm doing all the things and blah, blah, blah. But then when you get into a relationship, maybe you slack off on those things, and for whatever reason, it's taking your power away and it's making you feel less powerful in a relationship because you feel like your independence is being taken away in a relationship to some extent or in some way. And it's not necessarily the relationship. I keep thinking it's coming back to the relationship that you have with yourself, and maybe going on a journey of leading towards interdependence and becoming the powerful person that you are when you're single, also in a relationship, and seeing that you are sometimes more powerful in a relationship, or sometimes in a relationship, you access parts of yourself that you wouldn't normally ever access on your own. So being able to see it as in a very abundant, beautiful experience, and working on that belief system as well. So there's here, there, and everywhere in that answer, but that's honestly the first ramble that comes to mind when I think of why someone would feel less powerful in a relationship, to drag it home, just relationship to self, and those belief systems around how you are when you're single and in a relationship.
Yeah. Do you feel like it could also be when you are single, you're doing it all yourself, which is masculine. And then when you're in a relationship, you somewhat are, if you're in a relationship with a masculine man, you're put a little bit into your feminine, which is why you kind of lose that strictness, which is what women it also feels safe to be in your masculine. So do you feel like that could have something to do with when you're moving out of the single phase and into a relationship, you're more in your feminine? And maybe, I don't know about you, but I know so many women who are so uncomfortable being in their feminine because they've always been in their masculine.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that really speaks beautifully into that first bit of when you're single, you're doing all of these things for yourself because you're on your own. And that has got that masculine energy. You're waking up, you're checking a to-do list, you're doing all the things, you're doing, and you're masculine, and that's, really fulfilling you. And then in a relationship, maybe you might feel like you start to do those things to upkeep who you were when they met you, or the why behind why you're doing those things changes, or you're so used to doing all the time that, you're softening into your feminine when you're entering the relationship. And there's a part of you that maybe needs to do a bit of that polarity work to actually know that it's just as powerful to be softening. And it's not saying that you don't have to do the do anymore. It coexists, but softening and being more vulnerable and allowing more fluidity into your life and allowing more vulnerability into your life once you have a partner coming in is maybe threatening to the part of you that was quote unquote thriving when you were single. And I think this is thing as well that some women can feel years into the relationship that I've experienced myself is, you have this you can experience this, I was thriving when I was single and maybe I'm not thriving as much anymore, but it's not what you were doing. It's a feeling that you had. It's an emotion. It's a feeling. And you can get that in your relationship. But I think just like finding that and that natural going into a relationship and having more feminine making you feel less powerful, it's time to change your relationship with the feminine.
Yes, which was my next question / point, which was that it comes back to your perception of power, because our perception of powerful is a masculine perception of power, whereas you could see like going into a relationship and not doing all of those things that you were previously doing that were masculine, and like diving into your feminine, you could see that as power. Like that is again a societal thing. Like we perceive power in the way that society has fed it to us, which is women also kind of perpetuate this, because if you think about, I think about like Pinterest when I'm trying to like create a vision board and stuff like that, and I get onto this algorithm of like female CEOs and like this boss ass bitch vibes, and it's all very much women looking powerful the same way that men look powerful, but it's not we're not the same.
Yeah.
And so it's like it comes back to, are you actually less powerful when you're in a relationship, or are you just in your feminine and you don't understand what feminine power is and understand that you're in your feminine power, you're just not in your masculine power now, but you're still in your power.
Yes.
So it's like, what's your perception of power? What's powerful look like? Like, what does a powerful woman look like? And I can almost guarantee that that person will be like, the list that they've got is like a very masculine version. So yeah, I think that what's your perception of that word powerful? What does that look like?
Yeah.
And can that change?
Yeah. And I think as well, like on that, just off the back of that, is that conditioning piece too of what you have grown up to see a relationship look like, and what have you seen committed relationships do to other people that maybe then installs some sort of fear into you. Like, do you have a really close friend that has completely lost herself and therefore it's impacted your friendship? You don't want to end up like her, or your own parents, or an auntie.
A mum that's powerless to the father.
Yeah, like I've had that in my own life. And I think that can really bring on this conditioning aspect of, it's not that we are actually losing our power sometimes. It's that we just think we're going to, because that's what's happened to everyone else.
And it's like, I can't be like that.
Yeah.
I don't want to I don't want to get into a relationship and end up like my mum, who doesn't get to have a say in anything, and she's lost all her power.
And I honestly think as well, this is just dropped in, and it's something I'm so passionate about, is like, I feel like it's so normal these days for everyone to have like a shitty relationship and complaining about their partner and like just not being able to find anyone. And there's just like negative connotations, and yeah, fair enough. There's that still happening, and you're allowed to have those conversations and whatnot. But I think it's almost become the minority that actually just enjoy being in their relationship and see, relationship sacrifice or compromise or happiness as like, oh, she's clearly lost herself, or she doesn't even know who she is anymore. Like, you're going to change when you're in a relationship. And I think being able to surrender and like being that feminine to be able to allow those changes to come through, keep your relationship with yourself and your autonomy and like nurture that so much. But yeah, your life is going to change. You're allowed to have it change and not lose yourself, and enjoy your happy relationship and enjoy being in a relationship as a part of your life, just as much as you'd enjoyed your single chapter, and turn that into power, turn that perspective into power. And I think that's something that I say so passionately, because there was a time in my own life where I almost felt the need to justify when things are really good in my life. Like I'd be like, yeah, but like it's so good, or not say it, or not like absolutely back me in the relationship and it's going so well. And it's like, no, like I'm actually happy to sacrifice X or compromise this, and let's normalize doing those things from a healthy place. And I think a lot of people can feel like they're losing their power because maybe their idea of a healthy relationship needs to just be strengthened a bit more, and know that that's going to happen. Doesn't mean you're losing your power. It means you're being more powerful, interdependent.
Well, because like if you think about it, like I think about how hard it is to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
I can almost guarantee you that those people who feel more powerful when they're single feel more powerful because they're not having to be vulnerable as well.
So true.
So it's like, is it more powerful to shut down and to put up walls and to be hyper independent, or is it more powerful and strong to say the really hard thing? Like if that's power to me. And so you think about like those relationships, like you were saying, where they sacrifice or they speak about things, and that there's people that perceive that as you sacrificing your needs for another person. But at the end of the day, like, is that weakness or is that power? Because you're, like
100%.
totally perception. No
Jess
such
and I's
thing.
eyeballs are both so wide right now because we're just like,
No such thing as right or wrong. And it's that thing of like, many people have this belief that vulnerability is weak, which
Absolutely
is like
not.
so funny because vulnerability is so fucking hard and scary. And if you can do that, that makes you so much stronger than the person that refuses to do it because they think that it's weak. So it's, I don't know how that relates to, well, it kind of relates to power because it's like,
well, vulnerability is power.
it is. And even in a relationship, if you're feeling less powerful, it could be because you're having to be vulnerable.
I love how that really ties into like what you were saying of, well, what is being powerful to you then? What is power to you? And I think like it's just a very powerful question to have anyone ask themselves, because that could really enlighten you into why you think you're not as powerful in a relationship.
Because power, into a lot of people, is that like, I don't fucking need you, I can do it myself, I'm independent, like I can do it all myself.
Yeah.
And whereas I would now perceive that to be somebody who is traumatized and who can't ask for help, and somebody who is shut down and closed off. And I would see someone powerful would be somebody who could do it all themselves, but also knows how to prioritize connection and ask for help and be vulnerable, has ultimate power.
Yes. And a big question I would be asking, you know, to whoever asks this question is really taking the time here as well to be radically honest with yourself of where have you previously, or maybe in this relationship, where are you actually letting go of yourself in ways that's leading to you feeling less powerful? Like, are you stopping self-love practices? Are you catering things or your whole day around what they're doing? Or like, is there a truth as to why you're feeling less powerful that could be really helped by just having a bit more discipline or self-devotion to yourself? And it's not to say that, letting yourself go isn't because you've done all the wrong things. It can naturally and organically happen. And then I think we can feel a lot of shame around it. But it's like just picking up those pieces again and being honest with yourself of like, okay, I'm going to start doing this again for myself, or I'm going to stay committed to myself with this, and really just building up that self-trust again and like building up that internal power can be really powerful.
It also comes back, again, I feel like I've talked about perception so many times today, but it also comes back to your perception of like, back off the back of what you said, are you self-sacrificing? Are you sacrificing your own needs and self-sacrificing? Or are you nurturing somebody else? Are you like moving into a nurturing? Because I see so many reels on Instagram that are like, this is all the things that I do for my husband, and I love it because I love to look after him and give to him, and he looks after and gives to me in these ways. And other women write on it like, what the fuck, you shouldn't be doing that and you shouldn't be doing this. And it's like, well, is she less powerful because she's looking after him, or is she, feminine power and she's super powerful because she's living life exactly the way that she wants to live it?
Exactly.
Perception, like you can't decide what's more or less powerful. So you would say to that person, okay, like, are you actually less powerful, or is this a belief that you're powerless and it's showing up and it's making you feel that way when in reality you're not? And this is like so many of my clients. We remove the belief that they're powerless and we heal the trauma in those moments where they were actually powerless, whether it be childhood, teens and things like that. And all of a sudden, their reality looks pretty fucking good because they realize that they're actually powerful, they're actually free, and they're where they want to be, but they couldn't feel it because they had this perception. Yeah, are you actually less powerful in the relationship, or is it an old wound that's making you feel that way when in reality, that's not what's happening? And it can really leak into all areas of your life.
Yeah.
When you feel that way, like it doesn't matter if you have this belief that you're powerless, and these examples and these moments that are like in your nervous system implicitly, there's no way that you're going to be able to feel powerful in your life while they're there. You can try as much as you want, and that's where people get stuck in that pattern of like push, build. I'm powerful, but they just don't feel it, and they burn themselves out, run themselves into the ground because they just can't get that feeling. And they can't get that feeling because they haven't processed the memory that's constantly being triggered in different daily situations. And that's the power of memory work, memory processing, things like that. And then the belief off the back of that. You just can't experience it if you don't believe it.
Yeah.
And I have the perfect example of this. I had a belief, and again, intense example. If you haven't listened to my life story, it's in episode 1 if you need some context. But my belief was that because I was abused in childhood from such a young age, I basically split into 2, like DID, multiple personality, whatever you want to call it. I had 2 really clear defined parts of myself. We've got lots of little parts, but I had like 2 personalities that were made up of different parts and they didn't cross over. And it's actually like a natural, normal coping mechanism. It's a really smart thing that your brain can do to survive a situation. But I had this part that loved excessively, and I had this part that was angry but was also really powerful. She got shit done. She was protective. She was intense, but she was safe. She was free. She was like a go-getter. And then I had this other part that was love, self-sacrifice, put all of your attention into them, just don't even think about yourself. And they were really conflicting.
Yeah.
And that came from my dad because I had to be I couldn't normally be this other version of myself when I was around him, but I was that version of myself everywhere else. At school, which made me a bitch. At home with my mum, which made me a bitch. But when I was with him, I was this other version of myself. And I had this belief that you can either be powerful or you can have love. You can't be both. Like love and power were 2 separate things. You could not have love and power at the same time. It was just my brain could not comprehend the 2 things. And when I met Gav, I was really confused by this because his husband accentuated this because he played the same patterns out with him. He didn't like that version of me that was powerful, and then I would have to push that down and then go back into the version that excessively loved him and looked after him and forgot about all of my own needs. Like years ago, to the point where like I didn't brush my hair, like I didn't look after myself at all. I'd go so excessively into love and push down any part of power. And so I was always like, and then I'd go into this like, fuck you, I mean, get shit done, and I'd go crazy in my business, totally disconnect from him, disconnect from love, not interested. And then something could click and trigger me and I would move back into the other. It was exhausting. And when I started to, like when I got diagnosed with DID and it was brought to my attention that I was doing this, I was like, fuck, like I told my mum and she's like, you do have those 2 personalities. Wow. And so I started working on blending them together and it's like a whole thing. But anyway, that aside, I started to, when I met Gav, look at, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. Like I don't want to. And for me, when I was single, I felt like I was me. I was both blended together. I was me. But as soon as I got back into a relationship with him, it felt like they started to come back. So a relationship with a male was bringing it back up because that's where it was created.
Right.
And so, and this will be relatable because I've had maybe 3 clients diagnosed with DID, almost identical situations, and I've helped them to blend the personalities. So I know that there would be more out there that do that flip. And so I went to this healing session with Bridie. It was awesome. And I was like, I want to, like, I feel this flip still coming in where I'm leaning into self-sacrifice and then I'm leaning into this. And it's like, I can't be love and power at the same time. And I want to be able to blend them together fully.
Yeah.
And I had this moment where I did breath work and I had this moment where I saw Gav and I saw, like, for the first time, all these things that he'd been saying to me, like real things that he's been saying to me about my business, and I had this moment where I was like, oh my gosh, he actually loves that version of me that's powerful and the version of me that's soft. And I had this, like, just words just drop in of like, love makes you even more powerful. Because it was like love and power can't exist to like love actually fuels power. Like love will make you even more powerful. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, and I could think of 100 examples of how love can build you up. You can feel stronger in love. And back to the question, like you don't have to feel less powerful if you're in a good relationship. Love is like energy and fuel. And you've got this support person in this like person that's going to build you up, and if you have a bad day they'll lift you back up, and if you're winning they want to celebrate with you, and that's all the things I have now. And it just makes you even more powerful. And that was my shift from like, they can't exist to it makes you even more powerful. So that's something that I then now over the last year have been doing with clients. When I identify that, I'm like, oh, let's remove this and let's like look at the ways that love could actually make you even more powerful.
Yes. That is an incredible story.
That was a long story, sorry.
No, but like it brings it all home. It's so relevant. And I think it's really been able to, like, a big word for us today has been perspective, flip that perspective of how, you know, if you're someone thinking that it's going to take away from the time with yourself or take away from your business or be this element of take, it's like it's time to flip that and say, well, how can it actually supercharge that? How can it be a catalyst? How can it be a vehicle? Like, love fuels many, many things, and power is definitely one of them, whether it's being a powerful mum or a powerful business owner or a powerful, I don't know, lolly shop lady. I don't care, whatever you do.
A lolly shop lady.
Like, or whatever it is, like insert facet of you. Partner and love can do that. And if you're not in a relationship, like, have love be a life force energy for yourself now. Like, start healing that relationship now.
And love for yourself, like you said, because a lot of the time the masculine traits, and I've talked about this in past episodes, but like those traits of, like, some people go to Pilates and they look after their diet and they do all those things because they love themselves and they want to put into themselves, but a huge chunk of people do it because they hate themselves and they don't want to look the way that they look, and they're doing it out of like discipline and punishment towards themselves. That's a similar thing where, like, it's like, where's it coming from? Is it coming from love for yourself or is it coming from hate for yourself?
Yeah. And
where it comes from is so important.
Yeah, 100%. Like, if you can start thinking about that and really starting to shift into having it be fueled by love, you're going to be more in the physiological state to grow and adapt. Like, if you're doing all the things, checking all the check boxes and, you know, like what I said before, like going Pilates, doing thing or whatever, if that's from a place of like, because I'm not enough if I don't have this, or a place of lack, you're not going to see results mentally, physically, emotionally, or spiritually. It's going to be a lot more required. You're going to be exhausted. You're going to be resentful, insert snowballing, spiraling.
Yeah.
Try to see where you can infuse love and start by just actually sitting in love. Like, find some sort of facet of your life where you can sit in love.
Yeah, and find the wound. Like, I'm all about it. I talk about it all the time, but find the original wound, because you'll just keep going in circles of that, like self-punishment, self-sabotage, and then blowing out again, and then going into those bad behaviors and going back around in circles until you find why. Whole podcast, why do I do that? Until you find why you do that, where that came from, where that started, what the original wound is. And people just don't understand, like, everyone's out there trying to break patterns, like, through sheer force, which is fucking hard. And if you just go into your subconscious and you find the original wound and you heal it, the pattern just goes away.
Literally.
Like, it just stops.
You love it away.
You do, but you just, like, you heal, process the memory where it started. You shift the beliefs and the narratives and all of the wording around it, and your brain starts to change over the next, 48 hours as your brain rewires, and you implant those new neural pathways. You start using those, and yes, there are some things that are deeply ingrained that you go back into the pattern, but most of the time, myself and all my clients included, if you really get to the core memory and you actually process that memory and you shift all of those beliefs, you don't have to do all this fucking hard work to try and change the pattern. And, like, it's like that push versus pull.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to push and push and push. You're just pulled towards something different because you've changed the DNA of, like, where it started.
Yeah, definitely. Like, all that surface stuff that you'd spent years trying to figure out and do, and, like, you're still in the same patterns, and you want to know why you do that.
Yeah.
Wound.
Find the deeper cause. Come to one of us. Yeah. Find the deeper cause. That's our call to action today. Book a session. If this is you just need to book a session. We'll love to see you.
Yeah, we want to meet you.
Thank you for listening. And if you know anybody who needs to hear this, that is feeling this way, you've got a friend or a family member or anybody, please send it on to them. And thanks for listening.